moving towards the second session, it's my privilege and pleasure on behalf of ENTC Department of Government College of Engineering Karad, I welcome you all of you today. We are delighted to have Dr. Rev. Sriram with us to share her knowledge in our signal, image, and video processing, a practical approach 2020. Now, a short introduction of MAM. Dr. Revsi Sriram is working with Cummins College of Engineering for Women, Pune. She is having 18 years of teaching experience. She has completed her bachelor's from Pune University, master's from Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology, and doctorate from Satyabhama University. Ma'am has more than 50 international journal and conference publications. She has three published patents and two filed patents on her name. Now, I request Revati ma'am to start her session. Ma'am, please.
काय झालं ओके आहे ना
It is opening. Yes, yes, that we will be. Are you? Yes.
yes welcome madam welcome
Just a moment. Because it is showing some messages for me from the Cisco. Let them disappear because my PC is doing some processing. You can just keep me on mute from your side because it is not taking a click from my side. Okay. Yes. Are you able to hear me? You can just unmute because I'm not getting those options on my screen now. Unmute me and you can have the video of mine as well. I'm not able to reach from my side.
Yes, ma'am.
And once it's done, let me.
You have been unmute, madam. Yes.
Okay. Yes, we will start the session.
You can start the session. Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much for my introduction, ma'am. And today I'm going to actually discuss the topic regarding medical signal processing. And specifically, I will be talking about EEG signal processing, its analysis, and I will be covering one case study at the end. So, very good afternoon to all the participants. Are you able to hear me? Are you able to hear me? Coordinators, you can just let me know whether you are able to hear me. Hello? Anil sir, are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go on. We are hearing you.
Yes, Mahek sir, are you able to hear me? Should I proceed?
Yes. You can proceed, ma'am. We are able to hear
Okay,
you.
thank you so much.
Okay.
So in today's talk, I will be actually touching upon various points like measurement related to human brain, then what is electroencephalogram, how EEG can be acquired, why we need to study this particular signal, which are the various subbands of EEG-R, and the basics of EEG signal processing, how the features can be extracted, and at the end, I will be covering one case study. So, human brain related measurements. Human brain is one of the physiological system, but it is not the only system which we are having in our body. Human body consists of actually 11 physiological systems, and each and every physiological system corresponds to either one or more than one biomedical signal. So whenever we are talking about any biomedical signal, one thing we need to remember is that all those biomedical signals are going to follow 3N nature. Now, what is this 3N is all about? They are biomedical signals rather. They are most of the time non-linear, they are non-stationary, and they are noisy. Along with that, there is one more problem with the biomedical signals. The amplitude of those signals is really small. So generally, why we use these particular biomedical signals? Because in clinical settings, they are very important for the diagnosis, for patient monitoring, and for risk assessment. When we are going to study any brain-related signal, why we actually do that? Because we want to understand working of brain in a detailed manner. While carrying out such a kind of experimentation or to find out how our brain works, we need to make sure that whatever the measurements we are carrying out, those should be, if possible, non-invasive. Over here, non-invasive means we do not want to have any pricking, we do not want to see any blood around. Because being an engineer, it's better to work with all the non-invasive signals than the invasive ones. While doing so, we need to make sure that the body organ over here, the human brain, should get as less as disturbed. Because disturbing a particular body organ and then acquiring the signal is not the way we should be studying the signal for any kind of patient monitoring. Human brain is a very complex structure and it carries out so many processes like action, cognition, emotion, and perception. And all these processes are so complex that we cannot understand working of human brain by going for only one of the type of brain related stuff. So it is very difficult to understand these processes from only EEG signal. So it's always better for understanding of action, cognition, emotion, and perception, we should be going for multimodal analysis. Multimodal analysis means more than one biomedical signal related to brain can be studied. That signal can be 1D in nature or that can be in 2D nature. Some of the measuring techniques related to human brain are listed over here. The first one and the oldest one, which is very widely used, is the electroencephalogram. That's what the EEG is all about. It is an electrical brain signal, which is 1D in nature. Since last more than 80 or 90 years, researchers and medico people, they are using this signal. This signal is actually mainly studied for effect of epilepsy on humans. So what the epilepsy is, that we will see later on. Another very commonly used brain-related signal is near-infrared spectroscopy, which is a hemodynamic in nature. This is also an 1D signal, one-dimensional signal. When we are saying that it is hemodynamic in nature, means with respect to any change, maybe the activity, it might be the person who is thinking about it or moving some body part, something like that, there will be change in the blood flow in human brain. And whenever that blood flow changes, that will be acquired as a signal. That's what the near-infrared spectroscopy is all about. The third widely used signal nowadays is a cranial photoplethysmogram. This is an optical signal, which is 1D in nature. You might have heard about photoplethysmogram. Principle of photoplethysmogram is exactly similar to the cranial photoplethysmogram. Over here, when we actually acquire photoplethysmogram from the cranial side, that is from scalp of a person, or it can be from a forehead of a person, then we call that a cranial photoplethysmogram. The last two techniques which are listed over here are the 2D techniques, means those are the imaging techniques. Magnetoencephalogram, that is MEG, and the next one is a functional magnetic resonance that is fMRI technique. fMRI is similar to the MRI technique where the images are acquired with respect to a function carried out by a person. That's what the functional MRI is all about. Nowadays, very widely used techniques in BCI are electroencephalogram and near infrared spectroscopy. Whereas whenever we want to carry out any study related to maybe degenerative diseases, to be precise, neurodegenerative diseases, like maybe Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, or the Alzheimer's, people prefer going for MRI or fMRI. So this is in short, information about the various measuring techniques related to human brain. When these techniques are there, which can be used, we should be knowing what are the advantages and disadvantages of these techniques and for which application, which technique should be preferred. So this slide shows at a glance this comparative study where we can see that EEG and NIRS, they are having low spatial resolution, whereas they are dealing with pretty high temporal resolution, because these are the two resolutions generally we speak about whenever we will be talking about any 1D or 2D signals related to biomedical areas. Whereas EEG is mainly used to carry out studies related to epilepsy and in the neurodegenerative disorders, whereas NIRS is mainly used for functional mapping. Now, what is the functional mapping over here? Means whenever any person is carrying out any activity, maybe it will be like a finger tapping, or maybe he or she is trying to read some paragraph which is in front of him. That time, specific areas in his or her brain are going to get activated. To find out which brain areas are getting activated with respect to any specific function carried out by that person is known as functional mapping. EEG and NIRS, both these techniques are non-invasive in nature. That's the best part. Along with that, the cost of this technique is pretty low. And the best part is there is no exposure to ionizing radiation in both these techniques. Though low spatial resolution remains the disadvantage of these techniques. Now moving to 2D, that is the two-dimensional acquisition of brain, that is brain-related signal, that is the image. So MEG and fMRI, where medium to high spatial resolution can be achieved by going for these modalities with a medium to low temporal resolution. MEG-related studies are mainly carried out for epilepsy, whereas MRI-related studies are carried out for functional brain mapping. At the same time, it can be carried out for the neurodegenerative disorder-related studies. These are also non-invasive techniques, and the best part about these techniques is that it gives very good penetration depth. What does that mean? Over here, penetration depth means whatever the dynamics happening in the brain, deeper down, those will also be sensed by going for fMRI technique. Whereas such a kind of changes might not be able to record by using EEG and NIRS. Though the biggest disadvantage of both these modalities is pretty high cost. So cost is always going to be one of the problem whenever we are going to go for any kind of test. So we need to remember which one to select depending on the cost as well. Moving ahead. Now the response of brain to any activity. This particular slide might not be that important for the participants who might be working on EEG related database, freely available database. For example, a lot of work is getting carried out related to AI, ML, deep learning. Over there, they generally prefer working on freely available EEG, NIRS database or fMRI database. But if someone wants to work on acquisition of EEG for the experiment which is completely set up by him or her for whatever the research they are carrying out, then they should be knowing definitely how the brain works and which areas of brain are going to get activated with respect to the experiment selected by him. So that's why I feel that functional areas of brain and a bit of anatomy of brain should also be known if you are going to work into the medical imaging or signal processing. So coming back to our brain, mainly human brain consists of four lobes: frontal, temporal, parietal, and occipital. With respect to all these lobes, a very specific function is associated with. For example, movement, problem solving, concentrating, thinking, and the personality moods, all these functions are related to the frontal lobe. Whereas hearing, language, and memory is taken care of by temporal lobe. If we are talking about vision and perception, then occipital lobe comes into the picture. Whereas sensation, language, perception, attention, these functions are taken care of by parietal lobe. So when the study is supposed to be, experiment is supposed to be set and a study is supposed to be carried out, we will be knowing which kind of function that human is going to perform while participating in that experiment. Depending on which functions he or she is going to do, we will be knowing which part of the brain is getting activated, right? And theory of the utility. And depending on that, we can make sure that we should be having the sensors placed in that particular lobe to make sure that whatever the dynamics are happening in the brain in that particular area are recorded by our system. That's why this becomes very important. Whenever our brain is actually handling the various activity, for example, whenever there is any change or behavioral or cognitive change happening, that time neurons in our brain, they also start working. So there is a change in neuronal activity detected. Because of these neurons, lot of electrical signals are generated in the areas of brain. And when we capture those electrical signals by actually placing the electrodes on surface of the skull, that acquisition is known as electroencephalogram, EEG. That's what our today's topic is all about. With this change in the neuronal activity, there is one more change happening inside the brain, and that change is related to blood properties. Whenever any particular area of brain gets activated because of a particular function carried out by a person, there is increase in the blood flow in that area. With the increase in blood flow, there is increase in oxygen content as well. And when we measure or record that change in the oxygen content and change in the blood flow, that technique is known as cranial photoplethysmogram. It is an optical technique for recording the changes happening in the brain. And such a response is known as hemodynamic response. Moving ahead, we will just see whatever the techniques were listed out on the previous slides. How do they exactly look like, and which are the manufacturers or which are the source detector pairs used in that particular technique? To start with, near infrared spectroscopy or functional near infrared spectroscopy. Generally in NIRS, you can see over here, there is a headgear worn by a lady over here. That is what the sensing system is all about, where lots of source and detector pairs mounted on that headgear. And headgear will be connected to PC. Nowadays, we do get wireless connections as well. And then with respect to change in the blood flow, that change will be seen or observed on the screen, which is operated by a technician or by a doctor, a medico doctor. And we can see which areas of brain are getting activated. Most widely used source for NIRS systems are IR LEDs, that is near infrared LEDs, where the wavelength should be more than 800 nanometers. They can use lasers, laser diodes can also be used, whereas a detector can be a photodetector or it can be a OPT 101 as well, where we need to make sure that it is able to cover the complete range in which it is operating. Cost of this system is pretty high as 50 lakhs rupees. And the sad part about it is that we don't have any manufacturer of this system available in India. Most of our NIRS and FNRS machines are manufactured in UK, US, Europe, that area. Some of the manufacturers are listed over here. When and who can actually use this NIRS system? As we have seen earlier, this is an hemodynamic signal, very much similar to pulse oximetry. Nowadays, you might have heard about this pulse oximetry, though this pulse oximetry is related to the brain. So we will be actually measuring the changes in the blood as well as the oxygen content happening in human brain. This is a non-invasive technique for the assessment of brain, and whatever the changes in the blood oxyhemoglobin occurring in the brain, those can be recorded. NRS system can be actually capturing those signals from all over the brain, means by putting that headgear, the complete cap, or one can just capture these kind of signals from prefrontal area, that is the forehead or temple, that's what we call it. And it is very widely used by neurologists in neonatal studies. Neonatal studies means the babies which are aged lesser than 1 year. So in that study specifically, NIRS systems are very widely used. Coming to cranial photoplethysmogram, you can see that system over here in the picture. And there are two systems actually shown in the picture. One is a CPPG system and another one is a power lab based system, where power lab based system is used for the acquisition of EEG, and the second system is the acquisition of cranial photoplethysmogram. Over here, the cranial photoplethysmogram is acquired from forehead or from prefrontal area of a subject. The source and detectors used in this system were IR and visible LEDs, and the detector was OPT101. IR LEDs and OPT101, both of them are pretty cheaper, they're not that expensive, but a greater accuracy can be achieved if someone goes for laser diodes, though the cost of the system will increase, and there are some other constraints which should be taken care of if we are going to go for the lasers. Cost of this system was around 20,000 rupees, and we don't have any manufacturer for this system. It is actually the in-house design by Cummins College of Engineering for women. When and who can use this CPPG system? As I said that this is the photoplethysmogram actually captured from cranial site. And when we are talking about a photoplethysmogram, we know that photoplethysmogram signal can be used for finding out heart rate of a human being, respiratory rate. It can be used for finding out concentration of oxygen in the blood, that is SpO2, stroke volume, or it can be used to find out indirect measurement of blood pressure can also be done. So this is actually a signal which is captured from brain. So it is actually giving us brain dynamics. So to study heart-head interaction, this signal can be used widely. This is an optical signal which is hemodynamic in nature. And mainly this system is developed to capture signal from prefrontal area. Though a change in the source and detector needs to be done if we wish to carry out the acquisition from skull or from other brain lobes, because the penetration depth in that area should be pretty higher. This signal can be used for estimating brain aging. Brain aging is a very commonly used term nowadays, because whenever anyone who is aged more than 70 years or 80 years, doctor do say that go for an MRI or fMRI, and we will see how much is the brain shrinking is there. That too, if a person is going through any neurodegenerative disease, this particular test becomes very much important, because with this test, we will be knowing how much is the brain aging is there. And because of that, whatever the symptoms the patient is going through, whether they can be cured or we have to just be with those symptoms throughout the life. So brain aging estimation becomes very important these days, and it can be done by CPPG signal. Actually, very commonly used method till date for brain aging estimation is MRI, fMRI, or CT, that is computed tomography. This signal can be very widely used by neurophysicians or neurologists for actually again studying the dynamics of brain with respect to any disease. Coming to the next type of imaging which can be used for brain studies, which is fMRI. The machine of fMRI shown over here, it is actually very much similar to MRI machine, though for capturing fMRI, we ought to have some extra circuitry added to MRI machine, then and then only fMRI can be acquired. Otherwise, rest of the part remains same, the gantry and everything. The images of fMRI are shown at the bottom on the left-hand side, where you might feel that those are very much similar to images which we get from MRI machine, though there are some highlighted areas in red color and yellow color. That's what the change we observe in the fMRI images. So how does exactly fMRI image gets formed? Whenever person is actually carrying out any activity like a finger tapping, that time particular area of brain will get activated, because we know that various lobes of brain are associated with various functions. Depending on that, it will get activated. Because of activation of that particular brain lobe or that particular brain area, there will be change in the blood flow reaching to that lobe. With change in the blood flow, there will be change in the content of oxygen reaching that area. And change in the oxyhemoglobin is recorded by fMRI machine. And that increase in the oxyhemoglobin is shown in highlighted areas in red and orange color, which shows that with respect to the activity, these brain areas are getting activated. The cost of this system is really higher. It is as high as 250,000 USD for 1.5 Tesla MRI machine. Who might have worked in the MRI related studies or image processing with respect to MRI, CT and fMRI, they might be knowing the resolutions of various MRI machines. Those can be of 1.5 Tesla, 3 Tesla, 7 Tesla and 9 Tesla. In India, predominantly most of the cities are having MRI machines with 1.5 Tesla. Metro cities might be having some MRI machines with 3 Tesla and above values. But we haven't gone up to 9 Tesla yet in India. So if someone is going to carry out a research on a 1.5 Tesla images and someone is going to carry out a research on maybe a 7 Tesla machine, then definitely there will be a lot of difference in the resolution which you are going to obtain by both the machines, the images from both the machines. So when we actually go through whatever the research people have carried out from Western countries, we really feel that, wow, their images are wonderful. The resolution which they are getting is really wonderful. And with respect to that, maybe whatever I'm trying to conclude with the images which I'm dealing with might not be that great, right? So whoever might have worked with this, they might have understood what I'm saying about. Anyways, the main manufacturers of fMRI machines are GE, Siemens, Philips. They are the manufacturers of MRI machine as well. Who uses this fMRI? This is mainly used to study anatomy of brain, to determine precisely which part of brain is carrying out the functions like thinking, speech, sensation, etc. And mainly fMRI study is carried out to assess effect related to stroke, that is bleeding in the brain stroke, that's what we say, or trauma, or maybe during the neurodegenerative diseases. At the same time, fMRI is very widely used to monitor growth and effect of brain tumor before and after the brain surgery. So we can find out, because of removal of brain tumor, which are the functions the person may or may not be able to do, and based on that, which areas of that person are no more working the way they are supposed to be. So neurosurgeons very widely use fMRI. Though the cost of single fMRI is very high, it goes more than 10,000 rupees. And again, if the resolution of that MRI machine is going to be higher, maybe 3 Tesla and above, the cost of fMRI and MRI goes on increasing. Moving ahead. About the EEG signal. Why we wish to have EEG signal and want to work with this signal? Because this is a non-invasive signal, because being an engineer, that's what we are comfortable working with, right? It is easy to capture and it gives very good information while various studies related to brain carried out, like epilepsy and so. The most important thing about the EEG signal is that this is the test used for declaring a person brain dead. Why? Because this is a cheaper test. That's why. There are other tests also which can also detect whether the person is brain dead or not, but the cost of that test is pretty high. We definitely do not want to have such a costlier test. That's why EEG is widely used. It can be used to find out what is the effect of anti-epileptic drug on the epileptic attacks the person is having. So EEG can be actually acquired while the person is having epileptic seizures and after giving the doses of anti-epileptic drug and whether there is any change in the EEG that can be found out. This is not the only area where EEG related studies can be carried out, but the EEG related study can be carried out in various areas like sleep disorders, apneas, neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, schizophrenia, in cognitive research and psychology, in finding out whether there is any internal injury because of an accident, and during the strokes as well. How EEG acquisition is done? Again, as I have said earlier, if someone is going to work on freely available database, then this might not be the important thing for them, how EEG is acquired. Because they get already there is easily available EEG which is there, which is freely available, which can be used and just your algorithm can be applied to that data and features can be extracted and you can go ahead. But when you will be working on freely available database, there are lots of constraints because we don't have freely available database related to each and every brain disorder. And if you want to have your own experiment where you do have some idea how you want to actually conduct that experiment and what you want to find out, then definitely you won't be getting any freely available data of the EEG. In that case, you have to go for EEG signal acquisition. So quickly, I will let you know how that can be done. The main standard used for EEG acquisition is by going for 10-20 placement of electrodes. For 10-20 placement of electrodes, we are supposed to find out nation and Indian point on our head. Once we find out the total distance between the nation and Indian, that distance can be divided into 10% and 20% of the total distance. And that particular point of 10 and 20% of the total distance is going to help us out in placing the electrodes. So placing of electrodes is known as montage. And you can see in both the diagrams that there are some alphabets and some numbers written as in suffix. So when we are putting the electrodes on the skull, we need to divide head into two hemispheres, left hemisphere and right hemisphere. So left hand side of hemisphere is going to have the electrodes which are going to have suffix as an odd number. Whereas right hand side electrodes are going to have numbers, even numbers as a suffix. Where F stands for frontal lobe, then prefrontal lobe, T stands for temporal, C stands for central, P stands for parietal, and O stands for occipital. Then there is one more type of placement which is known as 10-10 placement. EEG signal acquisition can be done by going for 8-channel EEG signal acquisition, 16-channel, and more than 16-channel, maybe up to 70-channel EEG acquisition can also be done. If we go for 10-20 placement of electrodes, 8 and 16-channel acquisition is possible. because in 16 channel we generally place 21 electrodes. But if we want to place more electrodes for more channels, then we have to shift from 10-20 placement to 10-10 placement. About the montages, there are two types of recordings can be done of a EEG signal, either by going for a referential montage or by going for a bipolar montage. Referential montage means one of the electrode in all the EEG data acquisitions is going to be a reference electrode, and the second electrode will be placed anywhere on the skull. It might be in the temporal lobe, it can be in the parietal or occipital, depending on the study which you wish to carry out. But the reference electrode remains same. Whereas the second type of montage is a bipolar montage, where EEG is acquired between the two electrodes which are placed anywhere on the skull. Maybe one might be placed in the temporal region, second might be placed in the occipital region, so on and so forth. So we must feel that when to go for which montage. Generally in the clinical settings, doctors as well as we being an engineers who are working in that area, we say that we shouldn't be going for any one of the montage. Whenever you wish to carry out any kind of study, you should go for referential montage as well as bipolar montage and carry out EEG data acquisition, and then apply whatever the algorithm you have written, carry out the feature extraction, and then find out which montage works well for your studies. Moving ahead, as I have mentioned that one can have 8-channel EEG acquisition. If the headgear is already there, then we don't have to worry about actually measuring that distance of 10% and 20% of the total distance between the anion and Nation. So this particular slide shows a readily available headgear for acquisition of 8-channel EEG. It is by InnoBio. InnoBio is having a 32-channel EEG acquisition as well. So person is just supposed to put that headgear and the placement of electrode will be automatically taken care of. Where you can see that if the EEG acquisition is going to be 64 channel, then how many number of electrodes we will be dealing with. So that diagram can lots of electrodes placed on the headgear. When we are talking about EEG signal, event-related potentials cannot be ignored. They play a very important role. They are also known as brain-evoked potentials, and generally, ERP is nothing but the EEG acquisition while giving spatial stimulus to brain. That stimulus can be of two types, either visual evoked potential or it can be a auditory stimulus which gives you auditory evoked potential. Though out of two types of stimulus, the widely used stimulus is a visual stimulus. This reflects cognitive process of brain nerve point with the application of stimulus. So if someone is going to buy EEG machine, manufacturer does ask you whether do you wish to have these two additional things with your EEG machine, and of course you have to pay extra for that. So ERPs are generally based on attention, recognition, comparison, judgment, memories, and decision. So with respect to these functions, we can find out how the ERPs are changing. And ERP-related studies mainly carried out in epilepsy and dementia, one of the very common neurodegenerative disease which is seen in elderly people. When we are talking about EEG signal, we generally say that one shouldn't be working on complete EEG signal, but we should be working on various frequencies or the subbands of EEG. Why we shouldn't be actually studying complete EEG signal? There are some reasons behind it. For example, quick review of complete EEG might not reveal all the details which we are expecting. That I will be showing you later on while dealing with the case study though. And the important part related to the EEG related studies is that we won't be able to understand whatever the EEG is, whether there is any change in that EEG from the previous one. That change only be visual if we are actually observing a normal EEG and the epileptic EEG. Else, all the EEGs look very much same. To extract detailed information from EEG signal, we should be separating that EEG into different subbands because frequency band-wise analysis actually gives us better information so that we will be able to reach better conclusions related to the study which we are carrying out. Coming to the basics of EEG signal processing. As I have said that we shouldn't be going for study related to complete EEG signal decomposition comes into the picture. How signal decomposition can be done? One can go for empirical mode decomposition or can go for wavelets. There are various wavelets available in MATLAB toolbox. And then EEG can be divided into its subbands. A diagrammatic representation is shown on the slide where XN is the original EEG, where we are actually decomposing that EEG, which is known as analysis. And then we are combining the decomposed EEG again, which is known as a synthesis, and reconstructing the EEG, which is denoted by X of N. This kind of study is also carried out by lots of researchers, and it is very important when you will be dealing with EEG signal. As I said that we should be actually doing the decomposition of EEG signal. And of course, when we do the decomposition, reconstruction we have to do to find out whether whatever the decomposition method we have used, whether it is giving us the good results or not. We will see how that can be done. So EEG signal can be decomposed by going for discrete wavelet transform. Over here we can see on the left-hand side diagram that discrete wavelet transform is used and EEG signal is divided into two subparts. Approximate component CA and detail component CD. Detail component will always be carrying higher frequency band, whereas approximate component will be carrying lower frequency band. So we can see that it is getting divided into 0 to 125 and 125 to 250 Hertz. So this way, as we know that the frequency subbands in the EEG are the lower values in the frequency. So what we need to do, we need to carry out further decomposition of the approximate part, because approximate part comes the lower frequencies. So the further decomposition of EEG signal is carried out, and then we have reached to the various subbands of EEG, which are named as delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma. Few people say that just gamma above 30 or above 40 Hertz, or few people do name them as gamma 1, gamma 2, gamma 3, so on and so forth. That is the higher frequency band. Whereas delta ranges from 0 to 3.9. With the research papers which you might be going through, you might feel that sometimes that value changes a bit. They say that 0 to 4 Hertz, 4 to 8 Hertz, so on and so forth, or sometimes they say that a point is also there. While going for discrete wavelet transform, one can choose the wavelet depend from that bunch of wavelets which we are having, like a Haar, Debussy's, Koeflet, Simlet, and then a suitable wavelet can be decided for your application. Once a decomposition of EEG signal is done, it's always better to reconstruct that decomposed signal. Reconstruction of a decomposed signal is nothing but synthesis. What we do, we start from the lowest value of the decomposed signal, then we combine those two values together and we get an approximate value of the upper level. Then we combine the approximate component, which is reconstructed from the lower two components, to the detailed component at that level, and that's how we get again an approximate component of the upper higher level. This is how we go on, and at one point we actually reconstruct EEG signal. Now, when you reconstruct any EEG signal, which was previously decomposed, and when you observe that reconstructed signal and the actual EEG signal by naked eye, you might feel that yes, they look very much similar. But we cannot trust our naked eyes, isn't it? So we have to apply some parameters to find out whether they are exactly same or not. That we will see after a bit. So how does the EEG signal after decomposition looks like? This diagram shows decomposed normal EEG signal where decomposition was carried out in MATLAB using Haar wavelet. The uppermost subplot shows the original EEG, whereas the lowermost subplot in the yellow color shows delta waveform, which is ranging from 0.5 to 4 Hertz. You can see that the frequency of delta waveform is a lot lower than the actual frequency of the original EEG signal. So in EEG subband decomposition, when you do that, it is very commonly observed that as the frequency of EEG signal goes on increasing, the amplitude of EEG goes on decreasing and vice versa. So being a lower frequency signal, delta will have a higher amplitude. Now this diagram is of a reconstruction of epileptic EEG signal. Though this reconstruction wasn't done by Haar, I'm purposely showing you some different reconstruction diagram, but not by Haar, but by a simulate wavelet. You need to remember, if you have applied any one of the wavelet for decomposition, same wavelet should be applied for reconstruction as well. Okay. Over here, I'm just purposely showing some different diagram. Here, epileptic EEG is taken into consideration. So the uppermost plot is the lowest level, which was decomposed. So the top two subplots are combined together, and then this is how we go on. And we finally get the reconstructed EEG, which is shown by red color in the lowermost subplot. As I just mentioned a few minutes back, reconstructed EEG and the original EEG will look very much similar to naked eyes, right? But in the mathematics or whenever you will be doing any kind of research, you cannot just say that I have heard something or I have seen something. You need to prove everything mathematically, right? Quantitative analysis comes into the picture and carries a lot of weightage. So what information do we get from EEG subbands? Delta, which varies between 1 to 4 Hertz, it reflects information related to sleep, relaxation and fatigue, whereas theta 4 to 8 Hertz reflects excitement and shock. Alpha 8 to 14 Hertz, it reflects calmness of brain. Beta 14 to 30 Hertz reflects concentration of work of a busy brain. This waveform is also known as attention band. And this particular waveform or the subband is very widely studied in the area of psychology. Gamma, the higher frequency bands, they are going to come into the picture generally during the simultaneous processing of information from different brain areas. They are responsible for cognitive function, learning memory, consciousness, mental processing, perception. Whereas if the person is going to have any neurodegenerative disease, maybe like Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, we observe disrupted gamma waves in such people. And gamma waves are very widely studied in brain injury as well. Moving ahead, this is the slide which shows actually the EEG subbands and the representation, how does the waveform corresponding to that particular band looks like and its function, which we have seen just few minutes back. But the most important part which we missed out on the previous slide was the epsilon wave. Nowadays, lot of engineers and the yoga trainers, they are working in this area of epsilon waves. These waves are observed around 0.5 Hertz. And they are experienced in very deep and advanced states of meditation. At the same time, spiritual insight or out of body experience. Sometimes they say that people, when they meditate to a very higher level, they might feel that out of body experience. That time, researchers said that zero point 0.5 hertz related waves, those are epsilon waves, are predominantly observed. So this study is also catching up a lot in near future. How the pre-processing of the EEG signal is done, or which are the things we should be considering in pre-processing. Pre-processing is mainly about the filtering. So filtering means the removal, right? Removal of some unwanted signal. Which kind of unwanted signal which might appear in the EEG signal? The most important and commonly observed unwanted signal in EEG is the eye blink. Whenever we are going to be doing the acquisition of EEG, and when the electrodes are placed in prefrontal area, that is nothing but the forehead, or one can call that a temple area, and the study is carried out with eyes open condition, then while that acquisition is going on, the person might do eye blink, because that is very natural process, right? Whenever we are awake, we keep on doing that eye blink. It is generally 20 to 25 times in a minute, right? So with every eye blink, there is going to be change in the EEG signal, which is acquired from prefrontal area. And what is that change? That change is going to be actually decreasing the frequency and increasing the voltage, which is observed over there. So if you want to go ahead,
देवरे सर ने लिया था ना, और प्रिंसिपल सर भी थे क्या?
with
क्या बोल रहे थे? वही बना उनका हमेशा क्या होता है सर एडमिशन के वक्त, मालूम है?
हेलो सर, मे आई कंटिन्यू?
क्या बोल रहे हैं इन्होंने, क्या बोला फिर अभी फाइनल?
Yes. So whenever we are going to carry out any EEG acquisition from the prefrontal area, before extracting the features, we need to make sure that removal of eye blink is taken care of. So we ought to have some algorithm written in MATLAB to take care of the eye blink. If you are dealing with digital EEG machines, lots of filters are already available, and you can take care of lots of pre-processing automatically by setting those filters.
कोणाचा आहे क्रॉसटॉक?
सर ये कुछ भी करेंगे सर, ये उनको सुपीरियर दिखाने के लिए, बनाने के लिए ये कुछ भी कर सकते हैं सर। सही बात है क्या नहीं?
हेलो सर, आई एम एबल टू हियर सम अदर नॉइज एज वेल।
देखो मैंने बराबर।
मे आई कंटिन्यू सर?
सही बात है।
Yeah, you can continue. It's not the problem.
अगर ऐसी सिचुएशन नहीं होती,
crosstalk is coming.
आगे बढ़ जाता।
We are not getting it.
Yes, there is a crosstalk. That's why I was just wondering. Anyways, I will continue as far as
you can
are able to hear me. I don't have a problem.
Yeah, you can continue.
There are other type of artifacts which are known as motion artifacts, and sometimes the artifacts can be due to secretion of sweat on the scalp. So all those artifacts should be removed. Generally, the relevant information related to any EEG signal lies between 0.5 to 5 hertz. Sometimes, while carrying out study, we do not prefer having the upper value to 40 hertz, but we can go up to 70 hertz, gamma waves up to 70 hertz, or up to 100 hertz as well. It totally depends on what study you are carrying out. And this particular cutting or the selection of the frequencies can be done by going for a band pass filter of equiripple type. What happens if we are planning to capture EEG signal from a person who is having neurodegenerative disease? Then other than these very typical pre-processing steps, we need to do one more step over there, which is known as removal of an essential tremor. If the acquisition is carried out from a person who is having dementia or maybe Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, mainly the Parkinson's, then those patients, they keep moving their head with some
सही
specific
बात, वो डिले हो
frequency
गया।
after a very short duration.
प्रोसेस ही नहीं हो रही तो
So,
उसमें क्या
if the
करेंगे?
EEG is acquired
सही बात
from
है,
such a patient,
बिल्कुल
then
बिल्कुल
that
बिल्कुल।
artifact is also going to come into the picture. So we need to take care of that
कुछ
artifact
नहीं होगा
of
तुम्हारा।
essential tremor as well,
अगर
which
अगर ऐसा
lies
सिचुएशन नहीं
around
होता
3
तो
hertz
शायद
to
अभी
8
तक
hertz. That should be taken
आपका
care of
ये भी हो
before
जाता, प्री प्री
extract
पीएचडी
any
कोर्स वर्क भी हो
features
जाता
from
आपका, मालूम है
EEG
तुमको?
signal.
हम्म।
Which softwares we can use for
नहीं, मुझे
EEG
एक
feature
एक
extraction?
ही मिनट है, मुझे कितने कितने मिनट के लिए एग्जाम सेट करना है, इतना ही बताओ।
The mainly used softwares
ओके।
are MATLAB, Python, R language.
मैंने भी स्टाफ को डाल दिया है, डाल दिया, मैं कुछ नहीं करने वाला हूँ।
I have carried out my work mainly in the
हाँ।
MATLAB because I'm not that comfortable with the Python and R
मैंने भी
because
डाल दिया,
I'm not the computer IT
मैंने भी
person.
डाल दिया,
I'm
देवरे सर
an
से मेरी भी
experimentation
मीटिंग हुई,
person.
डाल
So
दिया, सब
MATLAB I'm
स्टाफ को
more
बोला है,
comfortable with.
और इवन
But
कम्युनिकेट
nowadays,
भी
whenever you are carrying out
अपने
any
व्हाट्सएप
work,
ग्रुप के ऊपर
we feel
कम्युनिकेट भी
that
वही
we
स्टाफ
shouldn't be
करेगा।
going for the paid
अगर तुमको कुछ
software.
प्रॉब्लम
We
आया,
should be
इन
going
दैट
for an
केस ओनली
open
यू टू
source.
कॉल टू
So
Moodle College।
Python R work, R
बस
language
इतना ही
works
बोलना है
well.
मैंने उनको।
But if
बाकी
you want
सब
to have something
यस सर,
very
यस सर,
similar
यस
to the MATLAB in the open source, then you can try out Scilab. That is an open source, very much similar to the MATLAB. As I have said that whenever the feature extraction is carried out, from that features, actually we should be carrying out the statistical analysis of the features as well. So that statistical analysis can be carried out by going for softwares like Microsoft Excel, which comes with the MS Office. One can go for Minitab or MATLAB. Actually, the Microsoft Excel is a very good software, but we underuse that software. And if we know all the functions which Microsoft Excel can take care of, we can use, and statistical analysis can be done in the Microsoft Excel without paying any extra money to buy these softwares. Minitab is the best software which I really like, and it is really good for the hypothesis testing. Whereas MATLAB can also be used for statistical analysis, though you have to write some code algorithm to carry out that statistical analysis, where Minitab doesn't require that code. It is having everything written. Lots of things can be done like p-testing, chi-testing, p-value, t-value, z-value, all the possible regressions, everything can be taken care of. So we should be knowing various softwares available to carry out feature extraction and statistical analysis. We will see why statistical analysis is also very important. Before statistical analysis, we should be knowing which features one can extract from an EEG signal. First, we should be going for a subbands of EEG. So once the EEG is divided into its subbands, that is decomposition is done, we can find out energy distribution in each subband. This kind of study is mainly carried out in epileptic EEGs, where the epilepsy can be of any type. It can be focal, it can be generalized. There are a number of types. Entropy can be found out from the subbands as well as from the complete EEG. Then power spectral density or cross power spectral density, then magnitude square coherence, this is the synchronization or connectivity measure. Phase coherence can also be found out between the signals. Time series and cross validation, cross covariance, which gives the linear correlation between the two signals, and eigenvalues values can also be found out from the given whatever the data you are dealing with. This slide shows one of the results which I have computed long back, which shows energy distribution in the various bands of EEG when we are dealing with normal EEG or EEG with focal seizures or EEG with a generalized seizures. Seizures means nothing but the type of epilepsy we are dealing with. So the three plots are of the normal epileptic EEGs, where the subplot in each and every plot, the first one shows the energy present in the delta subband, the second one shows theta, then alpha, beta, and gamma. As we already know that the delta is the subband which deals with lowest frequency in the EEG, whereas gamma is the subband which deals with higher frequencies in the EEG signal. So when we find out energy distribution in various subbands for the normal EEG, we can see that higher energy was observed in delta waves, whereas very lower energy was observed in beta and gamma waves, the one which are higher frequency, right? While when we go for epileptic EEGs, epilepsy is, we are going to have higher frequencies as well, and the magnitude of the EEG signal is also higher in epilepsy, whereas it is pretty lower in normal EEG signal. So the same variation between delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma is plotted over here for the focal seizures and for the generalized seizure. We can see over here that there is a lot of change in the energy observed in the theta, alpha, and beta band when EEG is no more a normal EEG, but it is an epileptic, right? Whereas not much difference was observed in the gamma waves, higher frequency waves, right? You can see that in the normal EEG signal, the energy in the gamma band is very much similar, irrespective of whether it is a epileptic or normal. Means higher frequencies do not reflect much of a change in the energy. That's why we said that instead of studying a complete EEG, we should be actually going for subband decomposition to reveal better understanding of the features which we are trying to extract. Because when the complete EEG signal is studied, it is having lots of higher frequencies, and higher frequencies always dominate lower ones. Moving ahead, power spectral density and MS coherence between the EEG signals is shown over here. Here, the EEG with a focal seizures is shown, and whereas the second diagram is the EEG with a generalized seizure. Whenever we wish to calculate or find out coherence, we need to make sure that we are dealing with two signals, because coherence is a connectivity measure. So it is going to give the connectivity measure between the two signals. So you should be dealing with at least two signals. So over here, two signals are taken into consideration, EEG1 and EEG2. Now you might feel that why are we computing the PSD? Now, as I am not going into the mathematics of all these features, coherence requires power spectral density of both the signals which we are going to deal with, as well as cross power spectral density between the two signals, because that's what the formula of the coherence is all about. So once we find out PSD of both the signals, we can estimate or calculate MS coherence. The lowest subplot in both the diagrams shows the coherence estimated between the two EEG signals when the seizures are focal seizures or the generalized seizures. Whenever the coherence value is going to be closer to 0, we say that the signal are not coherent. Whereas when the value is going to be closer to 1, we say that signals are completely coherent. So you can see here, there is a change in the coherence values can be seen. So when you want to actually estimate whether they are coherent or not, you need to take the average of this whole plot. And then you can find out how much is the average coming. That's why the statistical analysis comes into the picture. Right?
Hello.
Jali
meeting jali kamo.
Now the coherence in various EEG bands is shown over here. This is again a plot which I have taken from one of my paper, and this plot shows that the coherence between gamma, beta, alpha, delta, theta for a normal EEG, for EEG with epilepsy is shown. The first plot on the left-hand side is for a normal EEG. And in that plot, the first subplot is the coherence value in the complete EEG signal. Whereas the second subplot in the first box plot is the gamma, then beta, then alpha, delta, theta. First, we will concentrate only on the coherence between the complete EEG signal without decomposition for normal EEG, for focal seizures, and for generalized seizures. We can see over here that the value of coherence in the normal complete EEG is very closer to 1. Similar is the case when the EEGs are having focal seizures. And the same thing is observed in EEG with generalized seizures. So if we are going to stick to the coherence related feature and we are going to apply it to a complete EEG, we might not be able to observe the change in the dynamics.
Admission letter with progress report.
So that's why it's better to go for subband decomposition. So when we start studying subband decomposition, the box plot over here shows that the coherence in the alpha, delta, and theta is a lot lower in the EEG
असं
with
खूप कमी
generalized
लोक
seizures,
माहिती आपल्या डिपार्टमेंटला
whereas
तरी कोणी
it
नाहीये
is
माझ्या
pretty
मते
higher for the normal EEG.
मेकॅनिकलला
So
मेकॅनिकलला
I'm just
असेल तर
actually
सिलेक्ट
trying to touch upon various features with respect to complete EEG and with respect to subband decomposition. So we will move ahead. As I said,
बरोबर आहे
statistical analysis plays very important role. So once the features are
Exemption.
extracted from the signal which we are dealing with, we should be applying various statistical parameters.
बरोबर
So which are the mainly used statistical parameters? Those are mean. Over here I mean to say average. Then one can find out maximum and minimum value of that particular feature in which it is varying, of course. Then the variance of that particular feature can also be found out. Look for the standard deviation and kurtosis and
सगळं आहे ना
skewness.
सगळे अपडेट
This
केलेलं
is going to give you
जाण्याच्या
some
वेळेस
information or understanding about the distribution of data which you are dealing with. Sometimes dealing with statistical parameters only might not be enough. We need to go for performance parameters as well. So what is mean by performance parameters? It is going to give us an idea about which method or which classifier is better than the other.
अरे बाकीचे एवढे गाईड तयार होऊन गेले समजा फॉर एक्झाम्पल वेदियाची गोष्ट करतो वेदिया अगोदर बाबाच्या अंडर जाणार असेल तर तो वेदिया आता बाबाच्या अंडर जाणारच नाही दुसरी अंडर जाईल तर
This
बघतो
particular
100%
classifier is giving me accuracy of 80%, whereas second one is giving me 90%. That's why one should be going for the second classifier when studies related to experiment is supposed to be carried out. But every time you might not be boiling down to accuracy in this particular manner. Sometimes it will be in a different sense. I will let you know what that is. For example, when we apply any particular wavelet for decomposition of EEG, because I have shown you previously HAR was applied and the decomposition was carried out. Then reconstruction of that signal can also be carried out by using the same wavelength. Once we reconstruct that signal, that is, the reconstructed and the original signal should be ideally same, right? Of course, to naked eyes, we will be able to see that they are same, but they might not be actually same mathematically. So how you can find out whether they are mathematically same or not? That's when performance parameters are going to help us out. So performance parameters like mean square error, mean average error, root mean square error, signal to error ratio, or PRMSE can be used to calculate performance parameters. And you might feel that, okay, once I have calculated performance parameter, what is next? That what is next is the one which is going to help you out to decide which one to choose over the others. For example, as I have mentioned earlier, there are a number of wavelets available in the wavelet band. Whoever is dealing with the wavelets, they might be knowing it. HAR, Debye, then Coiflet, Simlet. And there is lot of variation between these wavelets. They are orthogonal, bi-orthogonal, and everything. We know all the basics of those wavelets, right? So whenever I'm going to carry out decomposition for whatever work I am doing, and let us say I have gone for HAR, and I have computed all the results, and I have made a final conclusion, and I am saying that, okay, this is what my conclusion says. When you go ahead with this kind of conclusion for publication in the research journal, or maybe for your defense of doctoral work, or maybe your master's work, definitely going to raise a question. Why you used HAR and not any other wavelength when there are so many options available, right? So that time, you should be actually checking out all the possible wavelets, at least 2 to 3 wavelets, on your data for decomposition and reconstruction. Once that is done, then you can actually calculate these performance
मी यासाठी फोन
parameters
केला म्हटलं ती
from
retest आहे आज.
decomposed and reconstructed signal, and whoever is going to
नाही,
give you the
सगळं
best
set करून
values
घ्यायचं
of the
आता. quiz
performance
वगैरेचे timing
parameters
set करून घ्या.
where the errors are
Date
going
set
to be
करून घ्या.
lesser
कळलं
and
का?
SCR is going to be higher,
हा, तुम्हाला
then you
timetable
can
पण
say
share
that
केलाय मी
that
आता.
particular
MVC ला आणि
wavelet suits
मोठे
well for your work.
10-12 instruction टाकून दिले आहेत
Once
सगळ्या
you represent
faculty
your
साठी. बरोबर आहे
work
ना,
in
मीच
this
करू का पण
particular
ते?
manner
आता मी सब्जेक्ट टीचर
in your paper or maybe in
4
your
ते 4
thesis,
बरं का?
no one can raise any question
ठीक आहे.
why you choose this, right? So
नाही
oral
नाही
explanation
टायमर
of
नाही
yours
द्यायचा, टायमर नाही द्यायचा.
or defense becomes
आणि
lesser.
एका पेज
That's
वरतीच
why
क्वेश्चन बरं
performance
का?
parameters really play
एका पेज म्हणजे एका खाली एक येतात.
important role in
बरं
any
का?
kind of analysis.
फक्त एरर वगैरे नको यायला पाहिजे, ते सगळ्यात महत्त्वाचं. बाकी काही
How do the performance parameters look like? This is again the table which I have picked up from some work of mine, which shows over here that a performance parameters are calculated for EEG signal and for the various subbands, and its
एकदम
corresponding
best.
value is shown.
Google फॉर्म एकदम
If
बेस्ट
possible, whenever you're going to stick to any tabular form, you can always go ahead with the corresponding unit. And once these values are observed, we can definitely tell them which one is better and why one should be going for that one.
बरं मी
Of course, we need to remember that
शिरपूरमध्ये तर वाटतं अजून परत
maximization of performance parameter is good. This is not the case always. Depends on which performance parameter you are dealing with. Sometimes maximization of that value will be better, whereas sometimes minimization of that value will be preferable.
मुसलमान होता का? हां हां हां.
Here, statistical analysis is carried out on performance parameters
हां हां हां.
and not on the features, right? So you can see mean, that is nothing but actual and average, is calculated for each and every performance parameter when the signal is a normal EEG or with an epilepsy. And how much is the standard deviation between this particular signal for all the performance parameters is noted over here. And of course, such a kind of calculation is carried out for various wavelets just to check the suitability of the wavelet. Then we can actually apply EEG related studies. EEG related studies can be applied to studying various types of epilepsy in brain computer interface. Though nowadays people don't prefer having only EEG related study in BCI. They prefer having multimodal analysis where EEG signal along with a NIRS signal is generally studied for achieving better accuracy. Then emotion related studies, we do use EEG signal. Few years back in the emotion related studies, people used to feel that we should be having maximum channels, EEG channels, so that we will be having lots of EEG signals acquired from all over the skull, and then emotion analysis is carried out and classification of emotion is done. But nowadays the trend is coming where people feel that instead of going for lots of channels of EEG, I should be actually writing an algorithm in such a way that my emotion classification should occur with minimum channels of EEG or minimum EEG signals handling. Then clinical and psychiatry related study do use EEG signal. Then in the sleep related studies, we go for EEG signals. Along with EEG signals, most of the time the respiratory rate is also captured by putting a belt near chest, which is a resistance type of resistance capacitive type of belt, and respiratory rate can be calculated or observed continuously. In sleep related study, generally EEG is applied for maybe 4 to 5 hours. Continuous calculation. And EEG acquisition is also carried out for estimating mental workload or stress. I am specifically mentioning over here Stroop, but Stroop is not the only way one can go ahead with this. One can design a game which is going to have lots of calculations, so we can have lots of cognitive and non-cognitive things happening along with some memory. And such a kind of game can also induce a lot of mental stress. And then mental stress estimation can also be carried out. So if we are going to deal with which features generally we should be talking about, we can work on energy, entropy, coherence, empirical cumulative distribution function. Here one can go for CDF also. And the commonly used classifiers are SPM, KNN, nearest neighbor, etc.
माझ्या फक्त एवढं म्हणणं होतं की
These
म्हटलं
are not the only
BPSC
features
केलं
which
ते
one should be
कोणाला
actually
दिलं
using
तर बरं
for
झालं असतं.
epilepsy
नाही
related
म्हणे
studies.
ते मागचा लोड
One
दिला
can
होता
try
मला
out
तोच आहे
other
म्हणे तो आणि
features
त्यातलं बाकी
as
होतं
well
म्हणे ते
or
आता
other
कमी करायचं
classifiers as well.
बरं का. नाही ते
BCI
करावं लागेल
related
म्हणे ते
studies,
म्हणे आता
the
बघ म्हणे मी
commonly
तर
used
दररोज
features
4 तास
are
येतोय म्हणे मी
PSD,
कॉलेजला म्हणे
entropy,
तुम्हाला
FFT,
तुम्हाला
PCA, principal component analysis, or one can go for auto
बोलता येत
iteration
ना ते
model.
म्हणून तोच आहे ना
Beverly decomposition
मला म्हणे
coefficients
तुम्हाला
can also
घरात
be found
तुम्हाला घरी
out.
बसून एवढं करता येत
And
नाही
commonly used
फक्त तुम्ही
classifiers
म्हणता
are
म्हणून
support
करतो
vector
म्हटलं
machine
सर
and KNN.
असंच सांगितलं डायरेक्ट म्हणून तुम्ही म्हणता म्हणून करतो म्हटलं सर मला
Emotion
बाकी काहीच
related
नाही म्हटलं.
studies, commonly studied features are FFT, then PSD, entropy,
करत नाही
REE.
काय करताय मजाक
And the
मारताय ना ते सगळं
classifiers used are KNN and LDA.
बरोबर बरोबर
The left hand side shows how actually the workflow of
Very good,
emotion
sir.
related study goes on.
हम्म.
In psychiatry related
बरोबर.
study, over here it is specifically shown a case of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which is known as ADHD. Nowadays, lots of children
मला
and
मला सांगत होता
youngsters,
बाबा
they
म्हणे बघ म्हणे
are
मी एवढं
having
काम
this
करतो
kind
तेव्हा
of
कुठे या
problem.
पोझिशनला पोहोचलो
So
अरे ठीक आहे तुझ्याकडे पॉवर होती
this
म्हणून तू
kind
बाकी
of
लोकांना सांगून
problem can be studied
अरे
by
तू काही
going for
एकट्याने थोडी केलंय
EEG
ते तू
activation.
लोकांकडनं करून ते
Where
क्रिएट
the
घेतलेलं आहे लक्षात
features
ठेव
can
तुम्ही
be
कळलं का नाही
PSD, coherence,
तुझ्याकडे तुझ्या खाली मॅन
entropy,
पॉवर पण भरपूर
energy.
आहे म्हणून तू एवढा
And
पोझिशनला पोहोचलाय ना तू
what
त्यावरती
and how we can actually find out, generally if the person is not having this
आम्ही
problem
काही
of
असं
attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, in such a people there
काय
won't be
म्हणतोय
higher theta wave, but the theta wave activity will be lower, but the beta wave
नाही
activity will be
नाही
higher.
ऐक ना
Whereas
मी काय
if
म्हणतोय
the
आम्ही काही
person
थोडी
is
होणार आहे
having
का
a
तू चिड
disease
होणार आहे का आम्ही काही
ADHD,
आम्ही काही पोझिशन
then
येणार आहे
excessive
का
theta wave activity is
तू तर
observed.
तेव्हा
There
तू
is
काही
there is a
करायचं नाही
decrease
जेव्हा
in
ते
beta
तेव्हा
activity. We won't go into the details of this particular example because I need to still cover one case study. In sleep related disorders, generally the features studied are entropy, energy, Itagura distance, harmonic parameters, and the commonly used classifiers are support vector machines, KNN, NN, and new wave. Mental workload estimation. This is an interesting part. In mental workload estimation, generally the features studied are coherence, reaction time, PSD, entropy, frontal oscillatory
तू
index.
बघितलं का
Along with this,
तू एनटीसी
nowadays
ग्रुपला बघ
people
तुम्ही
are
कसे मेसेज
also
टाकले बघ
trying
तुला
to
येईल
find
मी
out
राहणारच नाही मी त्या
hypoxic
एक्झाम मध्ये
coefficient
मी काहीच नाही करणार आहे
in
डायरेक्ट
mental
संपली
workload
आलं
related
लक्षात ना
studies. The
मग बाबाला बोललो
classifiers
ना मी
can
म्हणे
be
कोण का
HPM, KNN,
कोण
KNN.
करतं
If
म्हणे
you
कोण
want
नाही
to use the
करत म्हणे
classification,
म्हटलं
of
ग्रुप
course,
बघून घ्या ग्रुप मध्ये चॅटिंग बघून घ्या
very
तुम्हाला कळून जाईल
common
म्हटलं
flow
सर
for
बस
mental
सांगतो
workload estimation is
मी
there
कशाला
will
नाव
be an
सांगू
experiment
मी कशाला
set.
नाव सांगू
Of
कोणाचं
course, we cannot just go for a database which is freely available because we don't have freely available database for mental workload estimation. So we have to, if someone wants to work in this area, they have to set up the experiment. Then EEG should be acquired, which is known as raw EEG. Then bandpass filtering should be carried out for the selective frequencies of the EEG which we are interested
कसले
in.
मार्क
Then subband decomposition can be done. Artifact removal, of course, needs to be done before that. And then once that subband decomposition is done, we can find out the various features. And then based on those features, we can see how those features are changing with respect to
मग
increase in the mental workload. Now I'm going to discuss one case study. I know that actually I'm trying your patience, might be, right? But I won't take much time. In next 10 minutes, I might be able to complete my case study. This case study is really interesting. It is about mental stress estimation, but it is by going for a Stroop task. This work was carried out at Cummins College of Engineering
पण याला
as
सांभाळणार
a
कोण नाही
UG and PG
म्हणून
project.
सांभाळणार कोण नाही
Now,
कोण सांभाळतं याला
exactly what is mean by mental workload or the stress is nowadays. Stress is a very common word used by both the genders, that is males and females.
सांगायचं कामच नाही
Irrespective of the age group, everyone feels that they are stressed. Kids also say that, "Gosh, I am stressed." The same way youngsters do, they also feel
बघ
stressed.
ना तू वाचले का
The
इन्स्ट्रक्शन वाचले ना तू सगळे
people feel stressed.
संपली गोष्ट त्याच्यात काय माझा रोल सांगितलाय का इफ एनी
Position of their is, they feel stressed. Whether they are at higher
any problem
position or
arises then you
lower,
have to contact
they
to
feel stressed.
departmental model
So
coordinator or
stress can
Professor
actually
Sayyed
be
बस असं क्लिअर
induced
मेन्शन
because
करून
of
दिलंय मी
positive or negative events.
सेटिंग
When I
बिटिंग
say positive
सेटिंग
events,
बिटिंग सगळं
what does
तुम्हीच
that mean?
करत द्यायचं तुम्ही
Means
आलं
the
लक्षात का?
events which you want them to happen in your
बरोबर
life.
बरोबर
Madam,
Those are
sorry to
the
disturb you.
positive events.
Please, can you stop for a moment?
बरोबर 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 बोला.
This problem is not from all our participants. Even Cisco engineers are unable
मग
to
देऊ
locate
शकता.
that person. Unfortunately, that person is a faculty. And we are not at all able to locate. We have assigned this task to
Yes,
Cisco engineers, but Cisco engineers
हाँ,
are also
हाँ,
unable to locate from where this
बरोबर
crosstalk
बरोबर.
is
एकच वेळा
coming.
दिलं होतं बरोबर.
So please bear with us.
नाही ते
We are trying to locate the problem.
ते बोलावं लागणार आहे की सर रोटेशन मध्ये
Sir,
ठेवायचं.
may I continue?
संपली.
Yeah, you can continue.
हाँ,
Now, whenever there is a stress felt by any person, there is a release
बरोबर,
of
बरोबर.
hormones like dopamine, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. The body reacts to these stressors by changing or giving some change in the physiological parameters, like there will be increase in the heart rate, sweating will be observed, and he or she might feel nauseatic. Please remember that these are not the only symptoms which can be felt by a person when he or she is stressed. These symptoms do vary from person to person. Now, over here, when we are talking about mental workload or stress estimation, we need to induce that stress externally. How so? How we can do that induction of that particular stress into the person externally? To do that, various methods can be followed. One of them is Stroop task or game-based stress induction can be done, or one can induce the stress by arranging some cognitive or non-cognitive tasks, where while going through that task, person might feel that, hey, I need to put up some extra effort, so I feel stressed. I am going to talk about a Stroop task over here. So some of you might have heard about a Stroop task, and for some people it might be a very unknown word. So I will just let you know what is the Stroop task is all about. This is also known as colored word reading interface. Actually, it creates a conflict situation whenever we go and follow this Stroop task. And it is very commonly used in cognitive clinical psychology. And it involves various processes like reading, selective attention, language processing, and color word naming. Now, Stroop tasks can be divided into subtypes like congruent Stroop tasks and incongruent Stroop tasks. Now, before going into congruent and incongruent Stroop tasks, I will let you know what is exactly mean by Stroop tasks. Just an example. Let us assume that we are traveling on a road. Whenever we are traveling on road, what happens if we are away? Whatever nameplate, it might be a nameplate of any shop. There might be some directions where to take a turn, where to take an exit. Those placards are also might be coming in front of our eyes. Whenever such a thing comes in front of our eyes, immediately, without knowing, we start reading whatever is written on that board. So this is the normal human tendency to start reading whatever comes in front of our eyes, right? Of course, we do know the language in which it is written. Right? When we won't be able to read, that is a different part. So keep it aside. If that is the case, then over here what we make sure is task. Whenever something comes in front of your eyes, you're not supposed to read the word which comes in front of your eyes. Whereas you are supposed to name the color in which it is written. For example, let us assume that red is the word which is written. If that word red is written in the red color, then we call that as a congruent Stroop task. The red word is written in some other color, maybe green or yellow. Then what are we supposed to do? Our answer should be green or yellow, but not red. We are not supposed to read the word, but we are supposed to name the color in which it is written. This, while going through this, naming the color in which the word is written, there is an interference generated in our brain. because our brain feels that this is not the normal activity which I am used to doing it, right? So this is known as incongruent Stroop task. And because of the interference created in our brain feels stressed. And there is a change reflected in the features which we extract. So this is one of the method and the easiest method to induce stress in a human being. Generally, the Stroop task is divided into two theories: selective attention theory and speed processing theory. In selective attention theory, as per that, naming of actual color of the word is going to take higher attention than simply reading the text. Because whatever comes in front of my eyes, I will just start reading it. But it will be a bit difficult for me to tell in which color it is written if those colors are going to be continuously changing. That is definitely make my brain take some time for the processing. Along with that, the speed of processing is also taken into consideration. So as we said that being a congruent task, if you read that word, it is anyway written in the same color, so your answer will be right. So irrespective of whether you have understood Stroop task or not, the speed of processing will be higher, and the probability of getting the correct answer will also be higher. Of course, the base remains over here that you understand the language, you are able to read the words which are written in that language. Whereas when the word is written, for example, blue is written in green color, then definitely I'm supposed to answer that word as a green and not as a blue. It is going to make my brain difficult to understand in which color it is written. For example, there are two diagrams shown on the left hand side, one with a black background and another with a white background. The one with a black background is actually showing the Stroop task having all the congruent words. Congruent words means word written in the same color. Word blue is written in blue, word orange is written in orange. So on and so forth. Whereas in the lower diagram, the word yellow is written in green. Blue is written in red. So when such a kind of slide when comes in front of my eyes, I'm not supposed to read that as yellow, blue, orange, but I'm supposed to give answer as green, red, blue, yellow, so on and so forth, right? And definitely my brain requires some time to do such a kind of processing, and it is applicable to all the normal human beings. So this is what the Stroop task is all about. So Stroop task, this particular experiment was set up. And of course, those slides were made by using a PPT, PowerPoint presentation. And the EEG signals were acquired from various positions like temporal region, prefrontal regions. And those positions are shown over here. We do have the EEG machine. So EEG machine of NeuroWin was used for the data acquisition. Then that file was converted into a compatible file where the MATLAB can read that file. Then the features like MS coherence, phase coherence, cross correlation, cross covariance, PSD, CPSD was calculated from the EEGs of the congruent task and the EEGs during the incongruent task. And then the statistical analysis of all these features was carried out by going for parameters like average, that is mean, standard deviation, median, and F and P value was calculated. I'm not going to go into the details of F and P value. Whoever is dealing with the statistics, they will be definitely knowing why these values are important and how that can be estimated. Those can be estimated by going for either Excel or Minitab, very easiest way to do so. The steps which we are supposed to follow before actually conducting the Stroop task based experiment. As I said that this experiment is not that common. So people might not be knowing just by saying Stroop task. They won't understand what that exactly is. So we need to explain that task to each and every subject from whom you wish to actually acquire EEG signal. So when someone who wish to give their EEG signal for the Stroop task, once they arrive, you should be actually taking the consent. Consent can be verbal or written from that person. Now you might feel why I'm talking about the consent. Being the work carried out in biomedical image or signal processing, and whenever we carry out any kind of work, definitely the end point of that work is that we want to do some publication, right? Maybe in the journal or maybe in the conference. And maybe you need to write that down in your master's or doctoral thesis. So when you're going to do so, they are going to definitely ask you whether you have followed the norms. Have you taken the consent from the subject saying that you will be actually using their data for further publication? So this consent form is very much important. Once you take the consent, you can decide the questions in your consent form and the fields, various fields in the consent form. Just we need to remember that it shouldn't be too lengthy. It should be short. And you should be preserving them for future reference. Then once the consent form is taken along with his or her signature on it, of course, then EEG of a subject in the relaxed state should be actually acquired. After the, why we need to acquire EEG of a subject at the relaxed state? Because those features are going to act as a base value. And from base value, we are going to see how the features are going to change for the congruent task and for the incongruent task. Then one of the most important thing in the Stroop task is the reaction time. So we wish to actually measure the time taken by that person to give the correct response. So to find that out, we can actually go for time stamping. If you are going to have that Stroop task set up in the MATLAB, time stamping is possible. But if it is going to be in the PPT, PowerPoint presentation, you might not be able to take automatic time stamping. In that case, you need to have one more extra person sitting right next to the subject with a stopwatch to record that reaction time. Then we need to explain what is meant by congruent Stroop task and what is meant by incongruent, specifically incongruent, and what will be the correct answer in incongruent Stroop task. Please explain that to the subject, because otherwise what happened, they might just keep reading the words written. That is not what we are expecting. We are expecting they should be naming the color in which it is written, right? So it should be very clear to them. Make sure that the subjects are comfortable with the language in which you have designed the Stroop task. Okay? Generally, people have designed Stroop task in English, but one can try out designing Stroop task in their native language. Of course, the subject should be who understand that particular native language. So these were the actual slides which were developed in PPT, where the first leftmost side transition shows the congruent task, where all those colors are written in, the words are written in same color. So being a congruent task, I should be actually reading that as a red, blue, green, yellow, and purple. And when the incongruent task comes in front of my eyes, I'm not supposed to read red, blue, green, yellow, purple, but my correct answer would be blue, green, yellow, then purple and red. Okay. Then there should be transition between the slides so that there should be time given for our brain. So everything with the specification is shown in the table right here. Please remember that this particular task was a two-stage Stroop task. One can actually design Stroop task with more number of stages. Currently, my students are working on 11-stage Stroop task, which is designed in MATLAB, though the work is not yet completed. Stroop task can be designed in PowerPoint presentation or can be designed in MATLAB. If you are comfortable with C, C++, that software can also be used for designing a Stroop task. This style shows actually the congruent Stroop task. What is mean by congruent? Whatever the word which is written in a bold and bigger size, that is red on the left hand side, it is a congruent word because word red is written in red. I'm supposed to look for the correct match on the right hand side, which is also written in red color. So it is congruent Stroop task. So I'm supposed to be, for a correct answer, I'm supposed to click on red. And once this slide comes in front of my eyes, I will be clicking on the red, and MATLAB software, in the MATLAB software, timestamping can be attached and it will be able to take the timestamping and I will be able to find out whether the answer given by me is correct and how much time I took for completing that task. Similar way, there was one of the tile of incongruent to congruent Stroop task. This way we are having total 11 tiles. Okay, I'm not going to go into the details of rest of the tiles though. This is incongruent to congruent Stroop task. Why I'm calling it an incongruent? Because the left hand side, that pink is written, word pink is written in purple color, right? where I'm supposed to find out its correct match on the right hand side, where the whatever the right hand side is, it is a congruent one. Means blue word is written in blue, pink word is written in pink, so on and so forth. So over here, I'm supposed to click on the pink word which is written in pink on the right hand side for the correct answer. The features which were studied during the Stoop task were power spectral density, PSD, CPSD, then MS coherence, phase coherence, entropy, energy, and reaction time. From these, of course, these are not the only features which one should be actually extracting. If you wish to have more features, one can go for more features. And then later on, by observing the variations coming into all the features, you can decide which feature you want to stick to for the future. Conclusion of Stoop task related study, where we can say that it is a very reliable, low cost, non-invasive, easy to maintain task where it can be used for evaluation of psychopathology. This can be used as a screening test for mental stress estimation or brain dysfunctions. The very commonly observed thing in the Stoop task is that reaction time is going to be really lesser in the congruent Stoop task, whereas it will be higher for the incongruent Stoop task. That too, if the answers are going to be correct. Okay, we need to pay attention whether the person is giving the correct answers or not for the incongruent Stoop task. There is no way the person can go wrong in the congruent Stoop task. Along with this, there was a higher beta activity observed when person was giving a wrong answer in incongruent Stoop task. Such a kind of variations can also be observed. Then comes the validation certificate. When you are going to work on already available database, freely available database, validation certificate do not come into the picture because it is a freely available database. You can just use that. You can do the feature extraction, do the classification, publish your results and go ahead. But when the experiment is set up by you in a very special manner, then, and when you are actually extracting some results which are applicable in the medical field, then validation certificate plays very important role because we are the engineers, we are working in the biomedical field and we are trying to conclude something which is going to help the field of medicine. So whatever our conclusions are, if we say that this is how it will be helping the society, no one is going to buy our conclusion. To validate it, we should be actually showing all our results to the medico person. When I'm saying medico person, he or she should be a doctor, medicine wala doctor, and with a specialty in the same domain. When we actually show these results to a medico person, they will go through these results and then they will be giving you a certificate saying that whatever your results and conclusions are, they are in line with, or your findings are in line with whatever they are doing as in practice or whatever they have learned in the medicine. So this validation certificate is very much important and everyone is going to ask you whether you are having the validation certificates for your results. Trust me, it is not that easy to get the validation certificate, but you ought to have that. You cannot run away from it. Just to let you know, where we can find out free EEG database. There are a number of sites which are making available free EEG database. Physionet, Karunya University, University of Chicago, Illinois, then BNCI Horizon 2020, Open Neuro. For epilepsy related data, Karunya University, Coimbatore is having really good database and it is freely available. If you are willing to work in that area, you can use this one. With this, I will like to let you know which are the areas which can be further studied in near future, means the areas to explore. Head-heart interaction can be studied in depth to find out how exactly our heart and head parameters change with respect to any particular activity. And there is lots of things to explore in that area. Then, as I have mentioned earlier, brain imaging estimation by going for arterial stiffness parameters, that can also be carried out. I have already carried out that work based on CPPG signal and that patent is already published. Of course, if you want to carry out the work based on some other brain signal, that can be done. And you can actually add one more signal to the CPPG and still you can go ahead with the patent. Whoever is working with the patent, they might be knowing it, how to publish your own patent when already a published patent is there, right? I won't go into the details of that. Then synchronization related study of brain signals with respect to neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, dementia, Parkinson's can also be carried out. Because nowadays we do have lots of patients who are suffering with these neurodegenerative disorders. Lots of elderly people do have either of the disease with the age. So it's the best area to explore. Multimodal analysis of epilepsy can also be carried out because epilepsy-related studies are predominantly carried out with respect to EEG signal. And nowadays, we say that yoga and meditation, they are really good for the health, right? You might have heard this. And with respect to the COVID also, you might have heard this, that you should be doing yoga and meditation every day. When you say that yoga and meditation are good for health, no one is going to buy just your statement, you saying so. You need to prove that quantitatively, right? So you need to carry out some experimentation, and based on the results of your experiment, which are going to be the mathematical results, you can prove that, yes, yoga and meditation do affect our body in a positive manner. So that can be studied in depth by checking the effect of yoga and meditation by going for number of signals, or can be studied by going for multimodal brain analysis. With this, I would like to thank organizers, the whole organizing team, Dr. Sapkar sir, and all participants, my colleagues and my seniors. Thank you so much for all your patience. I hand it over to Anil sir.
Very informative session, ma'am. There are a lot of questions. Before that,
Yes,
extremely sorry we could not locate the person who was disturbing our session. But we have asked
not a problem,
Cisco
sir.
person. Okay, we'll go to our questions. The first question from Ajit.
Yes, sir.
Can we use image magnification and video magnification in medical field?
Image magnification and video magnification is possible. Image magnification is definitely possible, though I'm not sure about video magnification, but that is possible.
Okay.
Can be done.
Can be done. How do we filter noise from EEG signals?
For filtering of noise, you can actually set up the digital filters by writing a code in the software which you are dealing with. For example, in MATLAB, it is possible. If you have dealt with MATLAB, you might be knowing it already. If you are actually having EEG machine, digital EEG machine, then lots of filtering, digital filtering can be taken care of while acquiring EEG signal. Those settings are already provided in the digital EEG machine.
Okay. Can we use pattern analysis for EEG? And can we have copyright for our own created database of EEG? Okay, can we use pattern analysis for EEG? How?
Yes, pattern analysis for EEG is actually carried out, and it is carried out with respect to normal EEG signal and the epileptic patterns. It is possible.
Can we have copyright for our own created database of EEG signals?
Generally, we shouldn't be going for the copyright of the signals, the database which we are having, because whenever you're going to acquire any data, what is your aim? You want to carry out experimentation on that data, and once you complete or finish off that experimentation, you wish to publish that work. And when you go for the publication in maybe reputed journal like SCI or so, they make sure that lots of journals, they make sure that you should be actually handing over your database to them. Whoever have submitted and published their work in the elsewhere journals, SCI elsewhere journals, they might be knowing it. If you're not working on freely available database, if you are working on your data which you have acquired on your own, you have to submit that data while submitting the paper itself.
Okay, madam, is it possible to study the EEG signal and impact of different mantras or slokas on EEG signals?
Yes, that work is getting carried out. Yes, that work is going on, but definitely you can also try that out. But I will definitely say there is one, I'm not sure about the exact name of that, what I can say institute, but there is one institute in Lonavala, which carries out, Lonavala, I hope, the place which is near Bombay. They do carry out this work of effect of yoga, meditation and mantras on EEG signal. So if you are interested, you can actually try contacting them.
Okay. EEG signals are subject dependent and the subject might not always be present. So how to increase the efficiency in that case?
Subject dependent means if once the data is with you, then you do whatever the work you want to do with that data. So for acquisition, definitely you wish to have that subject around. And once the acquisition is done, you do not wish to have that subject, right? So it is subject dependent till the acquisition part, not later.
Okay, what kind of powerful electrodes or sensors used to capture brain signals for data acquisition?
Okay, over here, which type of modality you are talking about, that matters a lot. For example, if you are talking about EEG signal, generally the electrodes used are silver-coated or gold-plated electrodes, but we prefer going for gold-plated electrodes with the whatever that gel comes along with it. And if you are talking about some other modality, maybe the optical modality, then I have already listed the source and detectors which one can use. So if you just go back to the recording later on, or maybe when I hand over this PP2 to organizers, you will be able to find that out.
Can we remove 100% artifacts from EEG signals?
Good question. Actually, 100% artifact removal cannot be done from any kind of signal. Trust me. Okay, there is always going to be. If you go for 2D signals, still 100% artifact removal is not possible, because for a 2D signal, whenever there is a noise, we say that we are going to do the smoothing. When you do that smoothing of the image, you actually lose the actual data also. So 100% ideal case is not possible in the real world.
Okay. How EEG in sleeping person is different from a awakened person?
Yes, when the person is actually sleeping, then the delta activity is seen to be predominantly increased, whereas rest of the signals are pretty lesser. There is an increase in amplitude of the EEG signal, while there is a decrease in the frequency. That's how it is observed.
Okay. Madam, is it possible to record the memory stored in one's brain? Interesting question again.
I'm not sure about, actually. I'm so sorry, but I'm not sure about. Good area to explore, actually.
Yeah. What are different filters used in EEG signal processing?
Yes, that is totally depend on which artifact you want to get rid of, and you should be knowing that frequency of the artifact also, approximately, okay? And depending on that, you can go for the filter design.
Okay, I think we'll take a last question. Where we get database of fMRI? From where?
fMRI database, okay. fMRI database, I don't think it is available freely on website, any website, but I don't know where you are placed, means in which area of India, but I can just let you know where you can get hold of the fMRI. If you know the city Bombay, Mumbai, right, which is the important city in Maharashtra, there is one hospital named Nanavati Hospital in Bombay, and Nanavati Hospital do help researchers out by providing the fMRI database for free. So you can try contacting Nanavati Hospital for the same. They do send those files in the form of a CD or on your email ID, that too free of cost. You can just find out whom you can contact. If you're not able to contact anyone, you can send me an email. I will hand it over the contact to you from whom I was able to get the fMRI data, and then you can proceed. If you are in the Bombay itself, you can go personally and can have a discussion with them. I don't know any other hospital from anywhere else from the India. I'm so sorry about it though.
One more interesting question. I am working on suicidal thought prediction using machine learning. Whether is it possible? Can we use EEG or any other best technique to get brain signals?
Yes, that kind of study is going on. Suicidal thought, yes.
Yeah,
it is related to psychology. It is going on, yes. along with along with the brain related signals, actually one should be going for change in the physiological signals as well, because some kind of physiological signals do change in the people who are having those suicidal thoughts. It is possible, but if you go for multimodal analysis, it will give you the better results than just going for EEG signal.
Okay. If there are certain more questions related to EEG, we will be sharing the email ID of our expert. You can
Definitely,
email
sir.
the questions. You can email the questions, or you can put again the questions in the chat box. I think Amruta.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, all. My greetings to all of you. I'm honored and lucky to have the opportunity to give a vote of thanks of today's second session of Signal Image Video Processing Practical Approach 2020. On behalf of EMTC Department of Government College of Engineering, Karad, I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for Dr. Revati ma'am for her explanation of medical signal processing, each signal processing specific case study. Thank you very much, ma'am. Now, we are taking a lunch break of 1 hour and will again meet at 3 o'clock sharp. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amruta ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Revati madam.
Thank you, Revati, madam.
Thank you, Sabka sir. Thank you, Anil sir.
Thank you.
We'll be closing this session and we'll meet again at 3 o'clock.